this is where things get exciting, guys. In my opinion, this is what intrigues me to take action. I want to see social evidence. I want to see the proof in the pudding, so to speak. So today on this episode, what we're going to do is reflect on success stories that normal people just like you have had going through the systems and processes that associates and masters of the Little Pink Houses of America plan are achieving. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what I'm saying here, you're going to want to check the description for links to the previous videos that sort of warm you up to the idea of what Little Pink Houses of America is. But literally, in short, with no cash and no credit and an entry fee, you can essentially be on your way to earn somewhere in the ballpark of $15,000 or more with part-time efforts. And that number, the sky's the roof. There really is no limitation. We talked in our last video about an actual VIP coaching member who is considerably far along in the process of potentially earning himself upwards of $200,000 or even more on one deal. So this stuff is pretty insane, which is why I'm excited about it, and I want to continue to give you guys more and more details so you're informed. Now, with that being said, I'm going to just hand it over to you. If you want to share, you've got a specific story in mind, I know, of somebody that's a lot like the regular folks here that has done pretty well, right?
Yeah, so this is where the rubber meets the road. I can sit here all day long and talk to you guys about the theory of the platform, but when it boils down to application, the dollars and cents, that's what you're really concerned with, and that's what we've talked offline about. Who's making money? How are they making money? What we have is the infrastructure, and we've got the blueprint in place for these people to be successful. We've got a closing package that is proprietary to our model, and in all 50 states that is 59 docs long. So this is a very thorough process. There's a lot of, I would say, moving parts overall to it as far as documents, legalities. We've already worked all that out for you. And guess what? We're holding your hand every single step of the way.
I was going to say, as much as that 59-page collection of documents could be intimidating to somebody, it's the support behind it that should in some ways ease people's minds that this is just more learning.
Yeah, so we've actually simplified for our affiliates around the country. You really only have to be familiar. Now, we want you to be familiar with the entire doc set so you know your business inside and out, but it really boils down to about 3 to 5 documents that they have to use regularly. The rest of the documents are prepared by corporate with their local real estate attorney that will close every single deal. Okay. And we will coordinate that with the attorney. It's not someone that they're going to have to be on retainer, so it's not an ongoing expense, which is important. It's a per transaction fee paid by the buyer, typically anywhere from $400 to $600. But for our affiliates, especially right out of the gate when they want to start doing deals, they don't have to be well versed on every single one of the documents. That's important for me to share, but it is very thorough from A to Z. There's a lot involved. That said, our model on a per transaction basis really only boils down to 4 primary terms, or variables, if you will. There's going to be the price. There's going to be the monthly payment. There is going to be the term or the length of time that our buyers need to get financing in place, which, by the way, is dictated by our lender. Our buyers are fully going through underwriting. We're pulling 2 years tax returns, or they're pulling 2 years tax returns. Our lending institution, not our affiliates. They're pulling 90 days bank statements, pay stubs. We're taking them through underwriting just like a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America.
This is the third-party buyer. This is not you.
That's correct.
You are the affiliate or the eventual franchisee, right?
That is correct.
And then there's an end buyer in place. If you are familiar in any way with the concept of wholesaling real estate, this is similar in some ways and different and even better in a lot of other ways, which again is discussed in our other videos. But I just wanted to clarify that you're not pulling financials for the viewer here. You're pulling financials for the end buyer who's acquiring the property that you've contracted.
That's exactly right. And it's a third party, so not something you're going to be involved with. All you're going to get is a summary, and corporate's going to get a summary after the fact, so we know exactly who we're dealing with from the end-using buyer standpoint, why they can't go to the bank, how long they need to go to the bank, and they're getting a specific blueprint to follow. That would be the third variable. The fourth is the down payment. So in most cases, the sellers are going to want some amount of money up front. If I had a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 asset,
True.
I'm going to want some security in the form of something monetary up front.
Money-ish, right?
Yeah, so, and surprisingly enough, only about half the time the seller is getting some money up front.
No kidding.
And in our initial script with the seller, we're letting him know what our minimum fee is going to be. So depending on price point, our minimum is 10,000. Higher price points, obviously our minimum is going to be much higher than that. So I'm going to illustrate a deal here. This is with a brand new affiliate. We typically tell people to wait, 60 to 90 days to get their business going, get a pipeline built up before they can start anticipating putting big checks in the bank.
Which I should also dovetail. The person I mentioned who is attempting to close a big monster multi-hundreds of thousands in commission deal has really only been involved now for the last couple of months. It's been somewhere, I think, just north of 2 months, maybe 2.5 months total.
That's about right.
So again, very, very new from our side too, which makes it difficult for me to come in and share live case studies from actual VIP audience members because we didn't bring them into our channel until just around the end of November, I believe.
Yeah, and he actually didn't go through our formal training until right before Christmas, I believe.
So again, we're relying on Michael to bring us case studies of people who, while still very recent, aren't necessarily audience members from our channel. However, we will be doing that. And as people are having success, we're going to be asking you guys to come on the channel and to share your stories. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's also a lot of fun, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's different, but it's more fun than you might think. And we would love to hear how your life has changed in order to help other people's lives change too. So I just wanted to interject that as well, that's the reason that we haven't necessarily seen a ton of action other than people really moving. And I'm seeing a lot of people moving. I'm seeing a lot of people in the very first few weeks and even the first month or two that are really getting some hot leads that could turn into some huge revenue.
Yeah, we've already had upwards of double digits from your channel that have actually come through our formal training in Jacksonville, Florida already and are hitting the ground running. Leads are being generated, contracts are being put together. So It is in motion. It is happening with people from your channel right now, and these videos have not been out there very long. So they took action, they came down to the training, they're a blank canvas, and obviously we train them up from there.
And I'd love to talk with you a little bit more about that training, but let's go ahead and dive right into the example.
Yeah, so this is a gentleman out of Raleigh, North Carolina, had a limited amount. I think he had a couple buy and holds over the years. A gentleman named Leo, and he came down for a training. He actually came on board with our associate level program. So he came on in his market. It was a $25,000 buy-in. Came down for the training. We gave him the tools. He was there for 3 or 4 days, went back to his market. Again, one of the things that we do that's most important is the front-end lead generation for sellers. So he got a warm lead. With our help and his own tenacity, followed up with that lead, got a appointment to go out there and look at the house. It was a $300,000 house, which we kind of consider bread and butter. Now, some price points, the bread and butter is going to be higher than that. In his market, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 house, that's really his sweet spot. Yeah, exactly. So the seller was motivated. The house had been on the market for, I want to say, about 90 days at this point. So the longer the house has been on the market, the more motivated they are, period. Yeah. Sure. So he had the appointment. We were on standby. Someone from corporate will always be on standby to help you get those contracts remotely. We do that for our partners all over the country.
That's a nice perk.
Yeah, put the deal together. We assisted Leo on the marketing. So we've got someone that's dedicated from corporate to help them do online marketing.
Oh, I can't even imagine trying to figure this all out on your own.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what the support staff there is for. So we'll help do the marketing. Of course, he got flooded with buyer calls. Kind of whittled that down, found a couple qualified buyers, meaning they had the down payment. The particular buyer that ultimately put this deal together had 10% down. So a buyer called in, went out, loved the house, had $30,000, 10% to put down. And then I'm going to go into an illustration here on walking you through the exact math. So we'll do this on a whiteboard when we go through trainings, but I can spit these deals out all day long. This is what we would call a bread and butter deal. And I'm going to illustrate exactly what we did with Leo and holding his hand. We ultimately closed this one for him while he was obviously on the calls. And we do these either via Skype or Zoom because he was a 7-hour drive or a flight, and we don't always do that. If they're local, then that's something we can certainly help out with. But with that, I'll walk you through the math right here and show you exactly how we took the deal down. So the first thing we're going to do on every deal that we put together is we've got what we call our, and I don't know if it's that magical, but we're going to try and get the seller to come down enough on their price that we can actually build our fee in and take it back to the market without there being a price increase. Everyone has access to Zillow out there and does all of their online comps. Well, if one day the house is listed at $300,000 and the next day, let's just use our bare minimum $10,000 markup, it's out there at $310,000, that's going to be a head scratcher. So confused buyers don't move forward. So ideally what we're going to do to that seller is we're going to go to them initially when we're putting it under contract and say, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, if I've got a buyer that what we feel has the right stuff, they don't need a terribly long period of time to completely cash you out. Monthly payments throughout the term don't credit towards reducing the balance owed to you. We feel good about them and the deal as a whole you like. What's a number you can walk away with and still feel really happy? 99 out of 100 times, and there's always the exception, but with that very simple question right there, the seller is going to come down enough that can support our fee and we can take it back to market without a price increase. So in this scenario with Leo, he asked that magic question. Every seller is listing their house, and there's obviously exceptions to every rule, but is listing their house with the intent to take an offer of something less than that. Very few list it at their bottom line. So when Leo asked that question, just like anticipated, that seller went from $300,000 down to $290,000. The first thing that we do as Pink is we mark it up. So in this case, we marked it up $10,000. We were okay with Leo just making 10 grand on his first deal. And I'll get into how we made more than that on this specific one. So we're in a contract at $290,000. We're taking it to market with our fee built in at $300,000.
Basically wholesaling it.
Exactly. So we've got our $10,000 built in. The monthly payment that the seller was looking for, and it was really just debt service, was $2,000 a month. So we're marketing it $300,000 with a $2,000 a month payment when we're talking to these buyers. We had fully vetted this buyer out. Based on their specifics, our lender said the maximum they're going to need is 12 months, and they may only need 9. But we always want to be conservative there, so we were looking at a 12-month term to submit to the seller, and in fact, they were looking to go no longer than 12 months. The longer sellers are willing to wait, the more money they make because of the accrued monthly payments.
So is this basically becoming a lease option at this point?
At this point it is. When they get their permanent financing in place, they do convert obviously into the purchase sale agreement.
Why wouldn't they do that right out of the gate?
Because they can't go to the bank right now. Now we're writing a purchase and sale agreement. There is a lease.
Because of why? Credit?
This individual, I believe it was credit. Almost every credit scenario can be fixed inside of 12 months, as you know.
Right.
If it is, a lot of our buyers are self-employed. They might just have to file next year's tax returns or amend the previous year's.
Right.
This individual had some credit hiccups. We mandated them to go into our credit repair and mortgage readiness program. We gave them 12 months to do it. Now, what really made our eyes light up about this is that they had $30,000 to put down. The seller, did they want some money up front? Yeah, they did. However, we weren't locked in on any number. What we always tell a seller that is looking for money up front is this is to be determined. And in fact,
aren't you saving them 18 grand to begin with anyway? Because aren't they paying? They're avoiding 6% agent costs off the top anyway, aren't they?
They're avoiding that.
You've got $18,000 worth of agent costs. 3% on each side, which the sellers always pay. $18,000 is $8,000 better than the $10,000 markup or the $10,000 price reduction that you requested to begin with, right? So they're already coming out way ahead at $8,000 improved.
Yeah, and
but
not
they have to accept a tenant for 12 months under a lease option to own versus a buyer that's immediately ready.
That's exactly right. And they also get the benefit of those monthly payments. So if they've got an underlying mortgage like this seller did, every month their loan is amortizing, their equity position's improving.
Yeah, it's still, I get that. I look at that as kind of a bit of a moot point, only because I do think that there's enough potential trailing liability where they're obviously taking it off the market for 12 months, prices can shift.
Sure.
Buyer could then obviously not necessarily move forward and could pull out, at which point the seller may be sitting there holding the bag on a property that they expected they wouldn't even own 11 months earlier, much less a year down the road.
Well, let's just take the same scenario you had there with the list and sell. So on a 6%, you're looking at $18,000 right there. That also doesn't factor in almost every buyer offer today, and in fact, it's almost standard, is accompanied by a seller request for buyer closing costs, which is on average about 3% as the rule of thumb right there. Now,
which has been less, but it's coming back.
Sure.
I just got that on the deal I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
I got concessions myself.
Yeah, so you're looking at, let's say at 3%, let's call it 9% right there. That's a $27,000 swing. All we're asking them to do is drop $10,000 down so that we can build our fee in without having a price increase. basis, which is what we were able to do in this scenario.
But just acknowledging there's a bit of some trade-offs going on for the seller specifically. The buyer's getting a pretty good deal, in my opinion.
Sure.
Unless, of course, I mean, they can pull out at any time. They would just lose their deposit, right?
That's exactly right. Now, this buyer is going to have $30,000 of skin in the game. I would be hard-pressed to think that they're just going to walk away from it.
So they went the full $30 on the deposit?
They put $30,000 down.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, circumstances of the seller is also going to be a key variable, and we're going to know and have our finger on the pulse on every single deal. If this house has been on the market, which it has been for over 90 days, let's say that the seller, and I don't recall the specifics of their motivation, but what if they had a job transfer, they're not even living there, they've got a non-performing asset, they're carrying 2 mortgages, do you think that person's going to be a little bit more motivated than an owner-occupant that's been on the market for 4 days?
Oh, well, 100%.
Yeah.
No doubt. I'm just thinking through worst case. Worst case, in my opinion, is buyer puts $30,000 down, 10%, and between now and 12 months from now, we see a 20% decline in value.
Sure.
What happens then?
We've got contingencies built into every single agreement. Now, none of us have the crystal ball. All we can do with both buyer and seller is make the best deal we can with the facts.
But what happens to the money?
So the money,
the $30K.
the buyer still gets credit for it. So as soon as they get their permanent financing, it's not held in escrow.
What if they can't get permanent financing because the property's dipped by 20%?
We're going to extend the term for them, and the sellers are agreeing to that. So the contingencies protect both buyer and seller.
So the contingency in the forms basically says if the market falls and the buyer cannot get appraisal, then an extension is required.
It's absolutely required.
And if the seller says, I don't want to extend, I want to sell, at that point, the buyer gets the $30K back?
They do not, and the seller is agreeing to that extension up front as part of their contract. So it's not a scenario.
Or they can give the $30K back.
Well, the $30K is not going to them, and I'm going to show you that.
Okay.
Yeah, so in this scenario right here, what we ultimately did was took that $30K. How much out of that $30,000 do you think Pink wants?
I don't know. It sounds like a trick question.
We want
all of it?
We want well, that's a common answer. We want as much as possible without losing the deal. So in that scenario, if we've got $30,000 on the table, we've only got a $10,000 spread built into our deal. We want to carve out more out of that 30. So what we did in this illustration is we went back to that seller. We've got an agreement with them at $290. We're getting them the full $2,000 monthly payment that they were looking for. We've got a buyer that's looking and able to cash them out unless some unforeseen circumstance happens, but based on our third-party lender is saying maximum they need is 12 months. It's probably going to be much sooner than that. So the seller is okay with the monthly. They're okay with the term or the length of time. The only 2 other variables there are going to be their receivable, so what the offer is to them and how much money, if any, they're getting up front. What we ultimately did was we went back to that seller and we had a $290 strike price or contract price with them. We offered them $280 with $10,000 non-refundable up front, which left them a receivable at the end of the term, 12 months or less, of $270,000. So they had that peace of mind that they were getting 10 grand down up front, which they were not expecting. That was a lot more, I think probably twice than what we probably could have given them. There was not enough meat on the bone for us to get 25 out of that 30. We felt 20,000 out of that was going to be a fair, it was going to be a nice hit for us. And guess what? Our second profit center on every single deal is we collect that first month's payment. When the buyer takes occupancy of the home, they're making that first month's payment to Pink as opposed to the seller. That's the seller's only quote-unquote fee or skin in the game. So with that particular deal, we got the $20,000, the first month's payment of $2,000, Leo $22,000 on the first deal that cost him $0 to secure. That would be a double.
And then that was an associate level affiliate, which means he made 80% of the 22.
Yep, that's right. So corporate took 20% out of that deal. Yep.
Okay, so what, $4,400?
Yep.
Came back to you guys, and then he's left with the net of whatever, 17,600 or something
Yep,
like
that's
that.
correct. Yep.
Okay. Cool, $17,600. You know, you put $25,000 in, and how quickly did he secure that deal?
I want to say it was less than 60 days.
So within 2 months, you've got the majority of your original investment back. And how's he doing since then?
He's doing great. This was one specific deal. I know he's done a handful of them since. This was probably...
So he's in the black at this point. He's making...
Oh, absolutely.
He's making money.
Absolutely.
And how long has he been in now?
I think at this point he's probably 4 or 5 months in.
Wow, that's cool.
Max.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, none of this stuff comes without questions, obviously. And that's why you're going to want to make sure that you reach out to these guys, you ask your own questions. I'm here as an advocate for you, my audience. You guys are my family. You're my virtual family. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try and play the devil's advocate to everything that we look into to make sure that we have an understanding of all the what ifs before we get into something that we look back on and potentially regret. That's definitely what we want to try and avoid. I continue to be extremely intrigued by this. Hopefully you guys are finding it intriguing. We're going to bring live case studies into this conversation. So make sure if you haven't subscribed yet, you go ahead and become a member of the channel. Furthermore, drop a like if you want us to continue to deep dive into these things. I think peeling back each layer is so critical to having the big picture. And I appreciate all of your willingness to share these details.
Of course.
It's outstanding. So guys, we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Until then, make sure you shoot an email over if you want more information. Go ahead and email pink@vipfinancialeducation.com. We'll throw that in the description below as well. In the subject line, please put Pink Houses. And in the body of the email, make sure you include your first and last name and direct phone number so we can reach out to you. And we'll just go ahead and make the warm introduction to Michael and his team. And until we see you on the next video, make it a great day and take care.